The blizzard hit the small Montana town like a white monster swallowing everything in its path. Roads vanished beneath thick layers of snow, wind howled through the mountains, and even the lights of the few roadside diners flickered in surrender. At the edge of town stood one such diner, Martha's Place, a humble red and white 1950s-style eatery run by a widowed woman in her late 60s. The sign outside barely glowed through the snowstorm, but inside, the scent of hot soup and fresh bread still lingered, as if hope itself had taken shelter there. That night, when the storm was at its worst, Martha heard the deep growl of engines outside, not one, but many. At first, she thought it was thunder, until headlights broke through the snow curtain. 15 motorcycles stopped in front of her diner, their riders heavy with frost, leather jackets shining wet under the dim light. The insignia on their backs read Hell's Angels. Her heart skipped a beat. Alone, old, and vulnerable, she could have locked the doors. Any sensible person might have. But there was something about the way they dismounted, exhausted, shivering and battered by the cold, that stopped her. She saw beneath the tattoos and the beards men who looked lost and frozen. Without thinking, she opened the door wide and shouted over the wind, "Get inside before you die out there!" If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, then pause for a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Stories like this remind us how a single act of warmth can thaw even the coldest nights. The bikers filed in, their boots clunking heavily on the tiled floor. Snow dripped from their jackets as steam rose from their breath. Martha motioned for them to sit in the booths, her voice firm but motherly. "You boys sit down. I'll get you something warm." One of them, a tall man with a thick gray beard and tired eyes, tried to protest, saying they had no money on them. The storm had forced them off route. But Martha just waved her hand. "I didn't ask for your wallets. Sit." The kitchen came alive again. Pots clattered. The smell of chili filled the air, and soon, plates of steaming spaghetti and cups of black coffee appeared on the tables. The bikers ate silently at first, unsure of how to respond to the kindness of a stranger. But gradually they began to talk, softly at first, then with the easy laughter of men who'd found unexpected comfort. Martha listened as they spoke of their long ride across the mountains, of trying to make it to a rally before the storm cut them off. When the power flickered and went out, Martha didn't panic. She lit candles and placed them around the diner, the golden light casting warm halos on the bikers' faces. It almost looked like a church. Rough men gathered under the soft glow, breaking bread in silence. One of them, named Ray, asked where her family was. Martha smiled faintly and said, "Gone, all of them. My husband passed 5 years ago. My son, he was a Marine. Never made it home." The diner fell silent again. Outside, the snow raged on, but inside, something sacred was happening. A bond forming between people who, by all odds, were never meant to cross paths. As the night deepened, the storm worsened. The bikers offered to keep watch in shifts, making sure the roof held and the pipes didn't freeze. Martha handed out old blankets and coffee refills. One of the younger riders, barely in his 20s, dozed off in a booth, and she quietly draped a quilt over him, the same one she used to wrap around her son when he was a boy. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. By morning, the blizzard had finally eased. The roads were buried, but the worst was over. The bikers prepared to leave, brushing off snow from their jackets. Ray approached the counter and pulled out a crumpled $100 bill, placing it beside the register. "For the food," he said. Martha shook her head. "You needed it more than I did." Ray's eyes softened. "No, ma'am. You don't know what this meant to us." They thanked her, one by one, and rode off slowly through the snow, their engines echoing like thunder fading into the distance. Martha stood at the door, waving until they vanished. Then she sighed, thinking that would be the end of it, just a night of kindness between strangers. But it wasn't. The next morning, she awoke to a strange sound, a deep growing rumble that shook her window panes. She thought it was another storm until she pulled back the curtain and froze. Stretching down the street as far as her eyes could see were motorcycles, rows and rows of them, engines gleaming, chrome shining in the morning sun. More than 100 bikes lined up in front of her diner, their riders standing respectfully outside. Martha stepped out, confused, pulling her shawl around her shoulders. The first man she recognized was Ray. He walked up, smiling beneath his beard. "Morning, ma'am. You took in 15 of us last night. Today, 100 came to thank you." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at the endless line of leather jackets, each man and woman standing tall, holding packages, flowers, and bags of groceries. Some carried firewood. Others had boxes of supplies. A few even held tools. Ray continued, "You said your roof leaks, your heater barely works, and the town forgot about this place. Well, not anymore. You helped us when we had nothing. Now we're gonna fix everything for you." Before she could protest, they began to work. Half of the bikers went to the roof, hammering and sealing leaks. Others cleaned the snow from the parking lot. A few went inside and started repairing broken lights, painting walls, and tuning up her old heater. One group brought in new kitchen equipment, while another cleaned every booth and window until the diner gleamed like new. Neighbors peeked out from their homes, stunned. For years they'd whispered about those bikers whenever they rode through town. Dangerous, reckless, unruly, but now they were watching them shovel snow, fix pipes, and laugh with the old woman who had once been invisible to them. The same townsfolk who never stopped for coffee at Martha's place were now standing in awe as the Hells Angels turned the run-down diner into something out of a movie. When it was all done, Ray came back inside and placed something on the counter. A leather vest with a custom patch sewn on the back. It read, "Honor Rider, Martha's Place." Martha's lips trembled. I can't wear this." Ray smiled. "You already earned it, ma'am." The bikers stayed that day, eating and laughing, filling the diner with life again. Martha cooked for them all, her kitchen alive like it hadn't been in years. She moved through the booths, serving food, her hands steady, her heart full. When she sat down later, looking around at the smiling faces, she realized she wasn't alone anymore. Somewhere between the storm and the sunrise, she had found a family again, not by blood, but by choice. News of the event spread fast. Photos of the 100 motorcycles lined up outside Martha's place went viral online, turning her small diner into a symbol of kindness. Travelers began stopping by just to meet her, and the bikers made it their tradition to visit every winter, bringing supplies for the local community. The once-forgotten diner became a beacon of warmth in the middle of the cold Montana plains. Months later, Martha received a small wooden box in the mail, carved with the words, "Brotherhood never forgets." Inside was a silver pendant shaped like an angel's wing and a note that simply read, "For the angel who saved the outlaws." She wore it every day after that. Not for the glory, not for the fame, but as a reminder that kindness never goes unnoticed. It may take time, but it always finds its way back, multiplied, louder and brighter. As she stood by the window one evening, watching the sunset reflect off the chrome of parked bikes outside, she whispered softly to herself, "Harold, you'd be proud. The diner's full again." And for the first time in years, she felt his presence in the gentle hum of the engines outside, like a heartbeat of gratitude echoing through the snow. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because in a world that often feels cold, stories like Martha's remind us that one act of kindness can change everything. Comment below. What would you have done if those bikers showed up at your door during the storm? Would you have let them in? That night, as the lights of Martha's place glowed warmly through the snow, the sound of engines faded into the distance again. But this time, they didn't leave behind silence. They left behind legacy, proof that even the toughest souls can be softened by a single act of kindness from a brave old woman who opened her door when no one else would.